DNREC's emergency response team responds to oil, hazardous materials, biologicals, and radiation incidents throughout the state of Delaware. This is our hazardous materials, big incident, large incident hazardous materials unit that we also use for responding to meth labs and everything like that. Well, number one is protection of human life. That's the ultimate goal, is to ensure that no one's going to be hurt from the product that's releasing or the problem there. Then our secondary thought goes to the protection of the environment. Now, how do you do that? Make things stay in the containers that they're designed to stay in. If they've already escaped from their container and they're out in the environment, is the best way to control those. Can we put them back into their container, or do we need to put them in another container? So there's various different techniques you do. And it's also going to depend on whether it's a gas, a liquid, or a solid. Each one of those has its own challenges when you're trying to respond to those. Well, the exercise we did a couple weeks ago revolved around a chlorine car that had a leak on one of the domes. So we worked with our industrial partners, our NCMRA, Newcastle County Industrial Hazardous Materials Response Alliance. That's a mouthful. Well, for that incident, we had put people in specialized protective clothing. They went into the hot zone, which is where the problem is. They climbed up on the rail car and had to identify what valve was leaking. Once they identified the valve that was leaking, then we used a specialized kit. The one we chose to use on the drill was called a middling kit. Then they apply the middling kit to the valve, which basically isolates the valve, locks it down tight, and then containerizes the leak. It actually then starts to become somewhat part of the container. All our people are certified through either DEA training or another training out there for meth labs. We respond with any police agency that has a meth lab throughout the state. People are quite amazed that DNREC does that, but we have the science, the technology, and the equipment that they don't have. Anything we need for our meth labs is all engaged in our lockers here, whether it be boots, gloves, special protective clothing that the police officers would wear. They have the prosecution aspect of the meth lab. We have the identification of the material, moving that out to the tarps along with them to ensure that they can have a good criminal case and document that, and then ultimately either recycling the material or destroying the material because that material is unsafe to go into a courtroom setting. Liquid that leaks into a waterway are going to be dependent. If it's a petroleum and the specific gravity is that it floats on top of the water. Up in our rooftop bins we have absorbents. This is pretty much for all our oil spills and everything along now. We have booms, we have rolls, we have peat zorb, we have green stuff material all designed to pick up petroleum off water. And also skimming devices to pull that liquid back off the top. If it has solubility into the waterway, it's much more difficult, much like an alcohol is soluble into the water. It's going to mix throughout the water column, and it's almost impossible for a surface water spill to pull that type of material out. We average about 300 runs a year. Sometimes the number's up a little bit more. Back in the early 2000s when the white powder calls were out, it seemed like a never-ending call. But now we typically average about 300 to 325. If you ever release in Delaware, we have an 800 number. It's 1-800-662-8802. Our release is also residential oil spills. It's not all the big giant trucks and the bells and whistles. Saddle tank spills on a highway, a residential oil tank falls over, carbon monoxide alarms in homes. Just need to know the right number to call so we can get the right people to help you. So here again, it's 1-800-662-8802.